I can already tell. It's going to be one of those days on Wingin It Wednesday. Wingin It Wednesday every Wednesday morning. Driven by Service Chevrolet Cadillac. And, of course, Warren Cottle and Carol Ross.
Good morning.
Even Rob Kirkpatrick.
I decided to show up, yes.
Joining us in the studio this morning.
I decided to run in. That's how winging it this situation is.
I'm amazed. That is exciting.
He just flew in.
I got people to take care of around the building.
I
You guys are good? Week's going well?
Yeah.
Yeah, good,
now,
good.
wait a minute. You didn't say too much about your toast.
My toast?
At the wedding?
Did you give a toast?
Oh, he did a toast. He sure did.
But I didn't hear it. Is it on your Facebook page?
I'll show you a video. It's not appropriate to post on to actual social media. But I've decided that if you're going to make me do a toast at a wedding, I'm going to do a roast at the rehearsal dinner. So to sum it up, I basically gave the bride-to-be, my now sister-in-law, 5 reasons she shouldn't actually go through the wedding. And so it was,
don't marry my brother.
I knew it'd be something good.
I'm just a big brother, so I had to say, all the times that he dropped down on one knee to act like he was going to propose to you and said, like, your shoe's untied.
Yeah.
That's terrible. I'd break up with you.
Yeah, I would have broken up with him, too. Wasn't even a little man.
So there was a lot of those. Here's the funny thing, though. Since we're winging it now, we're in the safe zone.
Yes, because we're totally winging it on a Wednesday here.
My brother is, of the two of us, it's just my brother and I. Of the two of us, he's the daredevil. He's the broken bones. He's the flying off a four-wheeler into a cactus bush. I mean, that's him.
Yeah.
But now he's very boring, and all he does on the weekends is smoke meat in his garage. I mean, like, he loves to smoke.
I thought you were going to say smoke something else.
Yeah,
so
so did everyone else at the rehearsal dinner. I said all he does now is smokes meat, and then after I get done, they say, well, I mean, you really put him out there, and I'm like, what are you talking about? They said, you said he smokes weed. I said, are you kidding me?
On the audio that I heard, it does.
I said smoked meat, so then I had to use my toast at the reception the next night to
clear
clarify.
It all up.
So,
way to go, Rob.
Calm everything
way
down.
to go, Rob.
Smoked, I mean,
if one brother was ever throwing another brother under the bus at a reception, Rob Kirkpatrick wins the award.
I mean, I'm no Howard Stern.
Adorable.
I'm going to push the envelope, but I'm not going to blow it out.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, yes, I'll share the...
sorry to get you off track.
I'll share it with you. I have it on.
That was fun.
It was very fun. All right, guys. So, the political landscape is relatively unchanged since last week. They continue back and forth between Trump and Clinton, and now what seems to be kind of competing narratives about the investigation into the New York, New Jersey bomber. Are we going to call it terrorism? Are we not? Are we going to say he's part of something else? Is he not? Are we going to say it was random? It kind of goes back and forth. I'm just kind of interested in you guys, what y'all think about their reactions and who's going to win out when it comes to what story you're telling. Carol, go ahead and start.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is so ridiculous. So Trump says before a rally, he just gets the word, a bomb went off in New York City. And you'd think then the media went crazy. He's got Rudy Giuliani on his team. You got to think that Rudy Giuliani has some connections in New York. You think?
He might.
You think? And he's right there. And all Trump says is we have to get tough. It's a terrible thing what's going on in our world. Quote for quote, what's going on in our country. We're going to get tough and smart and vigilant. We're going to end it. Big deal. Mm-hmm. Big deal. Meanwhile, I tune over and I can't remember if she was on the plane or where she was because she was like sleepwalking. I swear, I don't know what meds they have her on, but this was the most painful thing to watch. I swear.
I noticed the same thing.
Did you see that?
I've seen that video,
I think
and it is
important.
It's a little weird.
I mean, she's staring off into. I think it is important to know the facts.
Do you think it's extreme
just like
exhaustion?
That. I'm not exaggerating.
Or it does seem very weird.
There's no question. Everybody agrees she does have some health issues. What should they have her? And they documented she's on Coumadin. Has anybody ever taken Coumadin? My mother did, and I tell you, and she really didn't need to, as they found out after all the tests were done. But if you do anything to adjust, because it's based on weight, they have to be so careful. The dosages of Coumadin can do crazy things. Well, anyway, we know she's on Coumadin. What other drugs she's on, we don't know. But I mean, that made me so uncomfortable to watch her stare off into space, and we are at the beginning stages. And she'd look around. I mean,
it's
really bizarre.
Very
bizarre. And
You're
then,
right. You just did something that I've noticed. Her kind of looking around.
Yes. Looking off into space. And I don't know whether that's a mech. But one of the videos I saw where she froze. She went into like aphasia at the podium, and her aide, one of her big bodyguards, had to come put his arm around her and get her started again.
Mm-hmm.
It's very off-putting. But the worst part is Josh Earnest then comes out and says, when it comes to ISIL, which they still refuse to call it ISIS because in the Levant has a whole different meaning than in Iraq and Syria or in the Islamic State or whatever. Josh Earnest says we are in a fight, a narrative fight. Really? A narrative fight? You're killing people with words? I don't think so. A narrative battle. These people don't even comprehend and don't want to, willfully do not want to comprehend because it does not fit in with their ideology. And it's sad. It's making the country less safe.
Okay, Warren, what's your thoughts on this?
I think all in all, it's basically a horrible situation. Is that you've got two sides here. You got the one side who refuses to acknowledge anything. You got another side who tries to at least stand up and say a few things that may be right. When these things happen, it happens. I mean, you can't sit there and whitewash it. You can't try to turn it upside down and act like it didn't happen. And what I think is really troubling is the fact that this guy's father had told the FBI about him and said that he was, becoming radicalized and wanted to have ties with terrorists and all this, that, and other. So the FBI does what? Basically the same thing they did about the airplane hijackers in 9/11. They looked at it, they wrote something about it, then they set it aside, and then they come back and said, well, the father sort of recanted. Well, my God, that happens all the time. It's the same thing when a wife calls the cops and said her husband just beat her up and threatened to cut her head off. And then they go over there and they go over and she said, well, I really didn't mean it. And they say, oh, okay, everything's fine, let's go home. And then 2 weeks later, they find her body out beside the road somewhere, head on one side and the rest torso on the other side. And they said, well, we didn't really take it serious because she said, it's the same old thing. You go back to pre-9/11 stuff where they had all these reports that went into the world's greatest police force in the world, supposedly the FBI, who knows everything, and they had all this stuff, but nobody did anything about it.
Nobody's connecting the dots, Warren.
Nobody's connecting dots. Then, apparently, they're not doing it now.
No.
John Ashcroft said when he took over as Attorney General a week before the 9/11 that he was astounded to find out that the FBI wasn't even using computers. Is that they were, everything they did, they typed out, they put it in paper files. They did that supposedly so they could keep a handle on the security of it. They didn't want everything being scattered here and there. So what it really came down to is that everybody was so territory protected of what they're doing that they don't want anybody else to see it, so they weren't sharing information with anybody. Mm-hmm. Now at least it looks like they are sharing some information. I understand this guy they caught. Mm-hmm. They did it, according to your girl Kim Commando, with about 8,000 different video cameras that they had scattered around different.
Oh, New York is so wired. I mean, they've got cameras on every block.
Everything else, and they get all the stuff and they send it out, and people suddenly started identifying the guy. Well, but when the facts are out there the way it is, how can you sit there and say, well, we don't know if it was a bomb or not? Well, Goofy, when something like an explosion goes off and it kills people, well, it's a bomb. Yeah.
Well, they've had that explosion earlier in the day in New Jersey. Come on. Somebody connect the dots. One of Trump's advisors did say that we have to start relying on local law enforcement more because they've got their ear to the ground. They know their communities. And this thing with FBI just holding all their cards close to the vest and not sharing, they don't have enough FBI agents.
We don't live in that world anymore.
No.
But you really need to rely on the common citizens, too. They're the ones that solve most of these things.
Most of it. Look,
that's the world we live in now.
The dad told him he's getting radicalized. He went to get back to Afghanistan how many times? And nobody
spent an extended period of time, I think 10 months.
Oh, yeah, but we probably have some rules and regulations where you're not allowed to use that kind of information to make a decision on whether or not a person should be allowed back into the country, and should they be searched when they go through customs, because then it may be profiling, so therefore we can't use that.
Yeah, well let's keep an eye on all the people that we don't need to keep an eye on so that we don't look like we're profiling.
Absolutely.
Ridiculous.
All right, let's go to the phones. Let's take a call, Bernie, before we hit a break. Sure. Good morning. You're on Wingin It Wednesday. Go ahead with your comment.
Well, I just had one comment about this whole, the root cause of all of our problems is we haven't been vetting people we're letting into our house. Mm-hmm. We let so many people come in here that we have no clue who they are. But I just, all of those that don't want to protect the borders and protect our home, I want them to go out in front of their house and put out a sign and say, this house is open and unprotected, and see where that leads you. Because that's what this administration basically has done by not protecting our borders and letting everybody and their brother come in.
Yeah, and even worse, then they have over 800, but some people say it's really over 1,800 marked for deportation. And what do? They give them citizenship by mistake. Who in God's name is in charge up there?
All right, thanks for your comments.
Yeah,
we
thank you.
Appreciate
it. Wow. Okay.
All right, we do need to move on to our next topic for time. We're going to get a quick break in right now. 7:28. We continue with Wingin It Wednesday, brought to you by Service Cadillac next. 7:32 at KPEL. Welcome back to Wingin It Wednesday. The off-air conversations, as always, lively this morning.
Yes, indeed.
And
Bernie,
they could get us in trouble sometimes.
Yes. Bernie, let's move on. There's a story you had in your news about the illegal immigrant. Reportedly deported at least 2 times, arrested for vehicular homicide.
4 charges. Yeah, vehicular homicide, driving left of center, no driver's license, impaired driving. So, but this is, one in a series of things that we have seen like this, traffic crashes, where
there were 2 right here in Lafayette that were questionable.
And there continues to be this cycle. So I guess the question is, what are we doing wrong? What do we need to do? What kind of pressure needs to come to bear? What's your insight on it, everybody? Warren, why don't you start first?
I think what we're doing wrong is we live in an insane world, and we just keep pumping more insanity into it. That I watched this thing on television one time. We were talking about, they had a panel of judges talking about the immigration stuff and how that it was passed a few years ago that every one of them had to have their day in court, and they have to have a court-appointed attorney and whatever. And this one judge said that a normal caseload is like 300 cases.
Whoa!
And she said she has something like 3,000 cases, and said that they're not putting any more judges in the deal. So you got this huge backlog of trying to just handle the cases as they come along. And these things were put in there for good reason, supposedly. And I think this was actually proposed and passed under Republican administration. And then you go back several years before that. We were just talking about this guy who went to Afghanistan and came back several times and whatever. The other side that I cannot fathom in the least bit, but you go back about 30 years or so ago, the Supreme Court ruled that the person is allowed to have dual citizenship. And that used to be, in order to have a security clearance to work in the government, you had to denounce any other citizenships that you had, and that you could only be an American citizen. Well, the Supreme Court ruled that violates their right to whatever, and so now you've got people that are in government running around there with top secret security clearances that have dual citizenships, and by the State Department's own rule, it says that whatever country you hold a citizenship with, you have an obligation to pledge allegiance to that country. So we're sitting here with people with top secret security clearance and all of that, Democrats, Republicans, independents, you name it, working in the government there. Different citizenships for different countries. And so, now we've got the immigration deal. It's only getting worse. And when you have things like this where the people out there, they're driving illegal, they're killing people, and nothing's happening.
It's just got to be absolutely heartbreaking.
Especially whenever it's your family member who, so many of these. And,
this conversation was pushed full throttle into the national media, the attention, and then it kind of shifted away when that woman was on that pier. Where was it, in California?
Yeah, Kate Steinle.
Yeah.
Well, that's what brought more attention to it, but it's been going on. I mean, if you look in some precincts in California, Arizona, Texas, they are going broke from having to give due process to illegal aliens that continually commit crimes, as this gentleman did.
And so,
and our Justice Department is absolutely willfully ignoring that. And it comes from the administration. Remember, the Justice Department is under the administration, and they do what they're told to do, Bernie. And they're not prosecuting these things because, we've got to have a new Democrat majority. And that's really what it comes down to. They need more voters. They were losing voters, and they need more voters, and that's the whole thing behind it. It just get those voters in here and get them voting Democrat. because nobody believes in us anymore. And look at our candidate. I mean, if anybody could follow, who would follow Hillary Clinton into a war? Name one person who would do that. I don't know. Maybe Uma Abedin. But and Cheryl Mills. But they wouldn't get a hell of a lot done, believe me. This is really a travesty. And when you see the city like Lafayette, Louisiana, which blew me away, Center for Immigration Studies. Now people have debunked the Center for Immigration Studies. But I'm sorry, there is a kernel of fact behind all that. Now, our sheriff spoke to our Rotary Club not too long ago and said he was going to request that we be not listed, because it was New Orleans and Lafayette listed as sanctuary cities.
And they did, apparently, to my knowledge, take it off of there.
Right, exactly. But it doesn't mean it wasn't happening at some time.
Right.
And certain statistics bore it out. And the sheriff said that he was going to let these people go through due process. Now, the due process was you arrest them, you do the court proceeding, but you bond them out if they can bond out.
Yeah.
And hold them for, I think it's like 48 or 72 hours.
You can't hold
for ICE.
them.
You can't hold them indefinitely,
Right.
but you alert ICE, and then if ICE doesn't come pick them up, it's on them. You know, but it's not an arbitrary decision by a local official.
But then they're going to end up releasing you.
Right. And the thing that bonding them out is a good thing, because then you have an extra person with an incentive to go get these people, because if they're bonded out, then they owe money to a bonding agency.
Yeah,
and they have a financial interest in finding these people. So you have one more little layer of maybe a little veneer of protection, whether it is or not. But this case in Evangeline, you confirmed twice that he was supposed to be deported, and you think it was more than that. You've been told it's more than that.
Let's just say that I think more will come out.
Let's hit the phones. 232-1542.
Yeah, there you go.
Calls. Sorry, no problem. Good morning. You're on with Wingin It Wednesday.
Good morning. I'd like to comment on the statement about who would follow Hillary Clinton into war.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm no great supporter of Hillary Clinton. I'm not going to be voting for her, but I would follow the president into war.
I know, but doesn't
Hillary Clinton, then so be it.
I know that because
you have taken an oath to your country.
Right, exactly.
Right?
But
yeah.
I'm speaking rhetorically.
I mean,
let's say I should have phrased it. Who really would feel confidence following her into battle?
That's the trust that you have to place as a soldier, that the people in power who have been voted into power are going to make the right decisions. And that's the oath that you take when you swear to support and defend the Constitution.
True. But...
And that's also the risk you take as a soldier.
True.
That the true and good orders are being given.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my comment on that.
Okay. Now, if it was an independent thing and it wasn't a military thing, let's say you
defined independent. What do you mean?
I'm not talking about the military. I'm speaking in another term. And thank you for your call this morning. If you had two situations where you had warring factions, and you said, I'm so-and-so, follow me into battle, or you had so-and-so who said, follow me into battle, would it change for you? But those people who go into service, they will do it.
Oh, I know, but, and as I said, I didn't phrase that maybe properly, but, it just has to give you pause. I mean, do you think that recruitment would go way down?
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
That's an interesting thought. Hey, Warren, your thoughts, and then we'll get back to the phones.
First thing I think we need to do is bring back the draft. Secondly, talking about obeying orders and all that, that you're taught from day one that you're only to obey lawful and direct orders. And what I would like to see at some point during this time, that the old crazy Marine General John Allen, who spoke for Hillary Clinton, said that they just might have to disobey all of Donald Trump's orders if he becomes president, because they just didn't trust him. Somewhere along the way.
Well, isn't that special? I missed that.
Somewhere along the way, though, we do need some generals who've got the guts to stand up and say, Mr. President, Madam President, whatever it is, I'm sorry, but I can't do that.
Well, I think some of them do, but they get bounced out like Stanley McChrystal.
But what they should do, they should have the guts to just leave and say, you're asking me to put these people's lives in jeopardy for no reason when you can't even define what the victory is. You can't even define the mission they're going. Yeah, exactly. Not only that, you can't even define who the enemy is. We're telling these people to go out there and kill some people. Okay, who am I supposed to kill? Well, you'll know when you see them. But if you kill the wrong one, you're going to prison. and so that's what
Wag
makes
the
this whole
dog.
thing so bad,
Oh, people are fired up now. All right.
Good morning. You're on with Wingin It Wednesday. Go ahead with your comment. All right, let's just move on to the next one. I don't know if you can hear us.
Might not hear. Just remember, when you hear the phone ringing, you need to turn your radio down. When you hear the phone ringing, just turn your radio down. All right, you're next.
Good morning. Go ahead with your comment.
Lorenzo, they were talking about recruitment being down. The last time there was a Clinton in the White House, the number of soldiers decreased very rapidly. And right now there's a big drawdown. And they're saying, with technology we'll be able to do more with less. But, you have to have a base number. And I'm not sure that they've decided what that base number is. And so, yeah, definitely recruitment would be down, and the draft is exactly the opposite of what we need. We need people that are willing to be there, people that are willing to be trained. Technology is being driven so fast. We need smart people. We don't need just anybody. We need somebody that can be trained and is willing to be trained. But yeah, there's definitely a base number that we have to have, and I think we're drawing down past that. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that you have people, the leadership. It takes a long time to train leadership. Well, if people have their 20 years in, they just go ahead and get out, and that's your senior leadership, and that's who you really need. And not just yes men. Under the first Clinton, we had more generals at any time other than the height of World War II. And we had fewer soldiers. We had half as many soldiers and twice as many generals. But if you kept your mouth shut and you were a senior officer, you could make general under Bill Clinton. So
all right, thanks for your comment. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks
appreciate it. All right.
I'm going to take one more before we go. Warren, just pop the topic up for us, please.
Talking about it takes a long time to train leaders and all that kind of such stuff. I absolutely disagree with everything that man just got through saying. If you go back to World War II, when you had the draft, and you had the old boys that went off the farm and all of that stuff and off the block and went in there, you had colonels who were 24 and 25 years old. You had guys that went in there within 3 or 4 months or 5 months. They were staff sergeants. They were leading platoons or whatever. You had people, but you know what the difference was? They had a mission. They had a mission that they were assigned to do, and they were going to do it come hell or high water. And they did. And it goes down to that one line in that movie with Patton, whenever he got off the tank and was walking with the guys, and one of them said, "Where are we going, General?" And he said, "We're going to Berlin. I'm going to personally shoot that paper-hanging son of a gun," or something like that.
It was,
where that, they had a defined mission, and as MacArthur said, in war there can be no substitute for victory. And it doesn't make, I think you're better off if you've got a draft and you've got people who are in there, they get a defined mission, they say, let's go do it, than you are if you're doing professional soldiers, like he said, that have been there for 20 years and want to stay for 30 or whatever.
All right, we're going to move the topic closer to home. We talked to Attorney General Jeff Landry a little bit earlier this morning. Want to get the panelists' thoughts on some things going on right here in our state. It's 7:44, and this is Wingin It Wednesday, brought to you by Service Cadillac.
Yes.
7:49.
That was a Broadway show.
That is why every man fears marriage.
Oh gosh. If you were to get us together,
we should put ourselves up.
We should put ourselves up on the market. Okay, let a political candidate come in here, and we will tell them exactly what's wrong, and we just need to be honest,
and we'll be right.
We'll call it the gridiron.
The gridiron.
I think we should also give dating advice, because I think it would just
I'm not
be
the
helpful.
best. I'm not the best on that.
No,
I've been to weddings where I've sit back. I can't
never
believe the waste of
I'm
my
with
time.
Bernie. I'm with
it's
Bernie.
never gonna
Let's
work.
give dating advice.
Warren and I would be a hit.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, let's wrap
Personally,
up.
I want to talk about traffic.
We talked about
I don't.
We are going to talk about it in the 8 o'clock hour. I can guarantee you that. I got to go look at that picture.
We talked to Jeff Landry, a state attorney general, a little bit earlier this morning about a few things that are cooking. The most recent is the fact that Louisiana has joined on with several states who are suing the Obama administration about the new overtime law, which takes effect in December. Now, it has a lot of business owners kind of scrambling to make sure they're in compliance. That has a lot to do with schedules and how many hours people can work and if you're eligible for overtime, etc. But obviously, from many of these states' standpoint, it's not the best for businesses. We're quickly wrapping up Wingin' It Wednesday, but Warren, I'd like to start with your thoughts. I mean, we're joining on to this lawsuit started by Texas and Nevada. we're kind of part of it, and it seems like it's going to be sort of free of charge for us as far as legal fees go.
One thing I agree with Jeff Landry on is that so many of these lawsuits, what they do is they drive jobs out of this country. They cost people more. We have the smallest middle class in Louisiana of any state in the union as a percentage of our population. We just keep running people out. There is not a single business in this state just about that unless they have to be here. Nobody's knocking the doors down to come into Louisiana. We need to start focusing on helping the people of Louisiana instead of helping the trial attorneys and some of those things. I mean, that's what this whole thing is geared for. You look at it, it's over and over and over again. They want to beat on the oil companies. They want to beat on anybody and everybody who's bringing jobs to this state, who's paying decent wages. And, it's time that somebody stand up against all this foolishness and nonsense.
Carol?
Here's the only law that counts with it when the government gets involved, the law of unintended consequences. Look at what happened with Obamacare. As soon as they put that in, what did they do? They reduced the work week from 40 hours to 30 hours. So why? So they didn't have to comply with Obamacare because it's breaking companies, it's breaking insurance companies, it's breaking states, and it's breaking companies. But there's a perfect example of the government getting involved and the law of unintended consequences kicking in on steroids. Now this one is the same thing. What gives the government the hubris, the idea that they know how to run a business when they can't run anything in the government properly? Everywhere you turn, government screw up. I'm going back to my P.J. O'Rourke. Government is too big, too stupid, and too greedy to get anything right. And this is going to be the same thing. Again, full employment for attorneys. It's ridiculous. Defining that certain people who may be in a management position, and maybe they want to be on that management track, and they're willing to work extra hours in order to get ahead. That's what people do in business. In government, it's like, that's not my job.
But it almost seems to me like if you have
Don't
someone
ask me to do anything, that's not my job.
On that management track, though, it almost seems as if the threshold that they're imposing would force you to just raise the salary. Because as long as you reach that threshold where you can be exempt, and I think it's
a backdoor way of government controlling what you pay. I mean, minimum wage, there's a perfect example of the unintended consequence being just terrible, especially for inner city kids who, need some training of how to work their way into the job market and be paid a minimum wage that an employer in a fast food restaurant could afford to pay them. Yeah. But no, we want to raise the wages so high that we can't afford to hire these kids. You wonder why automation is kicking in, in high gear in some of these restaurants. What do you see at the table? You see a little ordering kiosk, a little ordering tablet that you can order your own. How do you think this is going to end? It's not going to end well.
The topic's always insightful, always entertaining. Warren Cottle, Carol Ross. Join us every Wednesday for Wingin It Wednesday, brought to you by Service Cadillac. Over 1,000 vehicles on the lot. Over at 1212 Ambassador Caffrey, there's something for every taste, something for every budget. Even if you're looking at Cadillacs and you're like, I'm kind of a sports car guy. Well, remember a few weeks ago when I had that ATS-V? That's every bit sports car that you need. Trust me. There are a few over there on the lot. Go see my friend Dean over at Service Cadillac. And while you're there, you got to check out the new car wash. It's called The Wash.
Oh, yes.
It's right there next to the lot. You've seen it. Sometimes that traffic is backed up right there. I just have to merge off, get my car washed for a mental health break, and come back into traffic.
And how long does it take? I bet it doesn't take any time at all.
It's quick. And I don't vacuum.
You don't vacuum?
No.
You don't do windows either, huh?
I have goldfish-eating children. I vacuum, and as soon as, it's clean, it's dirty again. So if I just leave it, there we go. Go over there. You got to see The Wash. It's Wednesdays at The Wash, and we have a 4-pack to give away to a Wingin' It Wednesday listener. 232-1542, 232-1542. We're going to give them away to caller 5 with Wednesdays at The Wash with Service Chevrolet Cadillac. Call us now, 232-1542.
Go Cajuns.